In this episode, I talk about what's up with green pens, wearing fountain pens with a suit, and how to overcome the hardships of creating a niche business. Hey everybody, it is Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and it is episode number 160 of Goulet Q&A. I am wearing green today because it is St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day to you. And that's why I took the green pen question that I said in the intro. Just had to, I had to. I've been pretty busy here. Weather's been wacky. I know Northeast got hit with a big blizzard and we didn't really get any of that, so that's okay. But it's been cold and I'm just ready for that to be done. We had a really warm February, like record warm February, as most of you in the US did anyway, and now it's cold again and I'm not really enjoying it too much, but I do like wearing jeans though, I gotta say. I enjoy that part of it, but yeah, I'm ready for it to be warm. Daylight savings happened, so now it's brighter out, but man, the mornings are tough to get up in the morning. But anyway, not too much going on the Goulet family front. My son has his best friend's birthday party this weekend, so that's gonna be pretty fun. It's kind of cool, so that'll be really interesting to go to I think I'll be turning 7, so it'll be fun. 7-year-old birthday parties are always pretty entertaining, so it should be a blast. As far as pen stuff goes, we've got a couple new things that came in. The Platinum 3776 Nice Lalas, beautiful pen, gotta say. If you're familiar with the Nice Pure, it's got that same kind of ribbed thing going on, pretty sharp ridges too, so that's something you should be aware of. The grip is smooth, and that's nice, but just be aware of that. Very light pen, gotta say, very, very light. So if you're one of those people that associates high quality with heavy weight, this is gonna feel like a cheaper pen. It's gonna psych you out a little bit. It's a very nice pen, very clean. Build quality is really amazing, but it is very light, and so don't let that trip you up too much. Got a kind of a matte finish to it, which I like, and then it's got a rose gold trim too, which is really nice, especially against the pink. I'm usually not a pink pen guy, but I'm hanging on to one of these for myself because I really dig it. I don't know, something about this pink just really hits me in the right place. So kind of cool. So we got some of these, and they will be, so they've got a little clarity about the whole numbering thing, because I know that was a little confusing with this pen. So the pen itself is not numbered, so it's not a limited edition, but they are doing a limited number card. So it's this card, and it's hard to see with the glare what that looks like exactly, but it's a card and it has the number out of 2,000. So the first 2,000 are going to come with this numbered card. If you don't care about the card, who cares? Then don't worry about it. But so the first batch that we're getting in here is going to be part of the initial 2,000. So that will have the numbered card. We'll probably sell out of those, and then another few weeks down the road, we will then have another shipment which will be the non-numbered card version, but the pen's exactly the same and the same price and everything, so no need to freak out too much about that unless the card thing really matters to you, which is fine. It's up to you. Also got in the Knock Brasstown in Peacock and Charcoal, which I dig this color a lot. The charcoal is a nice complement to it, and then of course the outside is a peacock, which I like this color because it's kind of bright and stands out in my bag. So I don't have one of these in the Brasstown, but I've got one in the other one, so in the Lookout. So for sure you should check those out. We just got them in, so that is now completes the initial color offering that we have with Knock. That one took a little while. They're working hard over there to try to get these done, but they're a small manufacturer trying to get things ramped up a little bit, so I can appreciate that. But we do have those in, so you can check those out. Finally, we got a video out too. We had shot a Knock Brasstown video 2 months ago, I think, and we were just waiting for this color to come in before we published it. So I know Jenny and I are both thrilled to finally be able to release that with you guys. So that's pretty cool. Then we also got the Filofax notebook here in a Saffiano gold. So if you like gold shiny things, this is not the planner organizer, but it's a notebook with the pages that you can remove and swap around in the notebook. So that's pretty cool. That's a new color that's just come out there. And then we're going to have a dot grid refill coming out on those very soon as well. So if you are into dot grid stuff, we'll have removable dot grid inserts for that notebook as well. Another cool thing that we got is Monteverde 3 packs of ink. This one is Emerald Green, Garnet, and Moonstone. So this is a little package that we had done up for us here at Goulet. So rather than the normal size of the Monteverde inks, this is all their new Gemstone line of inks, which are pretty nice, I gotta say. So rather than their big bottle here that is normal for their inks, which is 90 ml, 3 ounces, we're doing 3 1-ounce bottles, which is still plenty of ink, but it's a nice little assortment, and so that's pretty cool. So that'll be coming out very soon, or it may already be out, depending on when this video publishes. Not sure, but either way, check the website, because that's more accurate than my memory is. And then also today on Friday, the Birthstone blog will have published that at this point. It's pretty cool. Team's put a lot of work into that, so that's really cool. I had very little to do with it other than kind of just being in the loop on the idea, but it's pretty cool. A lot of work went into that, so the team's excited. And then we got a lot of stuff that's coming soon. So much stuff. The email notification list that we have is like epic right now with all of the stuff that's going to be coming. We'll have the TWSBI mini alls blue pretty soon. That's probably going to be early next week before we actually launch that. And so we have some other things. Game of Thrones has just been pushed out a couple of weeks, so I've heard. And so a lot of things are just being delayed right now. So I apologize about that. A lot of this is just we have ordered it, waiting for it to come in, and it's still coming, you know. So things are kind of trickling in here and there, but just hang tight with us and we'll get it all in. All right, for this week, I went narrow on the questions again this week. I only have 6 questions. I tend to be rambling on these days, so we're going to see how I do today. I'm going to start it off with some pen and writing questions. So this is from Clarity on DX on YouTube. I really like the idea of Visconti's hook safe lock mechanism as a way of securing the cap to the pen, but I just can't see myself ever purchasing a pen that expensive, or heavy for that matter. Are there any other pens that are more affordable or lighter but have a similar mechanism where you barely need to twist in order to cap the pen? Okay, so I have on my person a Visconti Homo Sapiens, which is kind of my daily carry these days. And part of the reason why I love this as a daily carry, even though you say it's a heavy pen, I don't find it to be too obtrusive. It's got the hook safe lock. So this particular pen actually has 5 different places where it can latch. So you only have to twist the pen about 1/5 of a turn. And that is very unique to Visconti, and it's actually a proprietary system that they built on their pens. So they have this on the Homo Sapiens. They have it on several other models of pens as well, most of which the names are failing me, but the new Brunelleschi that we have in, that has it on it as well. The Opera Metal has it on there, and there have been other variations of the Homo Sapiens. The Visconti Divina has it on there. Some of their pens are threaded, like the Opera Master, and there's other ones that are magnetic, like the Rembrandt or the Van Gogh. But the hook safe lock is a proprietary thing that they put on a good selection of their pens. So I really like this mechanism. It's one of my favorite things about Visconti, about the Homo Sapiens specifically as well. And I looked through our entire offering on our website. I looked through my entire pen collection, which has a lot of things that we also don't offer on our website, and I could not find a single thing that was comparable to the hook safe lock in terms of ease of use and quickness of unlatching, I guess. Other than you have a bunch of snap caps, which that is pretty common among a lot of different pens. Pens like the Lamis, for example. It's got a snap cap, the Pilot Metropolitans, things like that. That, I don't know if you would consider that to be in kind of the same world, but I was thinking of anything that has a shortened twist lock like this. And I really don't have much of anything where it's less than a full rotation. There's some where it's just barely less than a full rotation, but it's nothing that's kind of this quick and easy to just latch and unlatch. So I kind of hate to say I don't really have a great answer for you, but some of my favorite ones, so you've got the snap cap, the screw cap kind, you've got this thing, and then you have a couple magnetic ones, like the Viscontis, the Van Gogh here, the Rembrandt is kind of the same way. And you get a retractable one, like the Pilot Vanishing Point, or the Fermo, which is its less popular counterpart. And so you get that as kind of a convenience factor, but nothing is really like the hook safe lock, I gotta say. Visconti's really figured something out with that one. So I looked at some other pens and just didn't come up with anything that perfect. So I would love to know if you know of anything that I don't. You know, I can recommend a bunch of snap caps like the Visconti, the Lamy 2000 is one of my favorite snap caps for kind of daily use, quick draw stuff. And then, you know, pens like the Pilot E95S are really great in that way, very smooth action, quick draw. But other than that, you're pretty much stuck with a conventional screw cap. You know, some are like 2 full rotations, you know, to undo. There's a lot of them. I've found, at least with me and my hand size, if I go about a 1.5 rotation is about my maximum that I can do on a single turn. Anything beyond that, and I'm gonna have to reposition my hand and go for another turn. I'm just gonna grab a pen at the onset here, so I have Aurora. You know, and what I do is I hold my finger there and I see how many times around I have to turn it to uncap it, and that's a 1.5 right there. So, you know, I go 1 full rotation, then when it hits about halfway around, it's done. And that one I can undo in 1 motion and do. You know, I'm kind of maxing it out a little bit there, and I have to do a concerted motion with both hands. But there's other ones that are not quite as much. You know, 1.25 is a little more common. That is about perfect in terms of, you know, single screwing motion, which please don't hashtag that. Yeah, like a Pelican M800 here. This is like one full rotation. So that's actually pretty good in terms of being able to just, you know, cap and uncap. So that's not bad. And pens like that are in the 1 to 1.25. I was looking, and we actually don't have anything on our website that makes it an easy tool to search through the whole, how many times do you have to twist, like the amount of rotation and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? That would actually probably be a pretty cool tool to build. So without committing myself to that at this moment in time, I will say that probably be pretty cool. So if you think that would be cool, just leave me a comment and that'll help motivate me to actually get that done. All right, next question. This is from Molindela on Instagram. Are there any not too expensive, fine or extra fine nibs that are really wet? Or a way to increase the flow in a pen without making the line wider, assuming good paper so it doesn't just spread? I have small handwriting but love shading and sheen. So I imagine this is probably coming off of, you know, what I talked about a couple of weeks ago with, you know, getting good sheen and shading, and how you don't necessarily have to have a very, you know, broad or italic pen when you, especially when using shimmering inks and stuff like that, how you can use a wetter writing, fine or extra fine. The challenge that I had with answering your specific question here was the not too expensive part, because most of the wetter, fine and extra fine nibs that I have experience with are gold nibs, which then pretty much immediately jump it into the what I would consider to be expensive. You know, if it's $140, $150 or more, that's really probably a little more expensive. And most of those are going to be your German and Italian pens. You know, these are going to be your European pens. Most of the Japanese fines and extra fines, no matter the price, are going to be a little bit on the finer side. So even though if they write a little bit wetter, they're going to be much finer in size than their European counterparts. The kind of the exception to that is some of the Pilot nibs, like their medium nibs, tend to be a little bit wetter, a little bit broader, and a little bit closer to the European sizes. So I find that Japanese extra fines and fines tend to be a little, you know, on the finer side. Their mediums and broads tend to lean a little bit more towards kind of the standard European sizes. So there's that to take into consideration. But I think you'll have to play around just a little bit and kind of see which one. So Pilot, you know, the medium, you know, if you go with a medium steel like on the Metropolitan, that might kind of get you where you need to go. It's not the same as writing with, say, a Lamy medium or something like that might be a little bit wetter. Most of the JoWo nibs tend to be a little bit on the wetter side, so that would be any of the Goulet nibs, which you'd have to swap into a pen, Edison nibs, which I don't know if you consider Edison's to be on the not so expensive side, and TWSBI as well is using JoWo. So some of those, not as much maybe the extra fines, but the fines could kind of fit in that category. So I think that's a good way to go. And that's about the best option that I have right now in terms of the not so expensive side. But I wanted to answer, really focus on the second half of your question, which is, you know, is there a way to increase flow in a pen without making the line wider? Yes, there is, sort of. It's a little bit of hacking, and it's a little bit of, you know, you're entering into, you know, warranty void disclaimer territory here. So I'm going to talk about, you know, modifying your nib and your feed to be wetter, which is difficult to go back and undo, and it's also easy to do wrong. So if you screw it up, please don't blame me. So I will touch on that for a hot second. And I'm actually going to use an Edison as an example for how to do it. So this is, oh, of course, I picked one without a nib on it. Let's see, let me pick something else. Nemesine. Let's go with Nemesine, similar kind of setup. So it's got a number 6 nib on it. Let's say my Nemesine is writing too dry. I want to modify it to write a little bit wetter. So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can do that either by modifying the feed, basically increasing the flow that's coming up to the nib in the first place, or you can modify the tines of the nib to write wetter so that more ink will just kind of come down. So it's kind of two different ways of looking at. One is like increasing the supply that's coming to the feed. The other one is increasing the draw that's coming out of the nib. So either way could work. But what you want to do, again, heavy disclaimer here. So you pull the nib and the feed out. And if you notice, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. The way that the feeds are set up, this is basically all fountain pen feeds are in some form or fashion like this. Coming down your feed here is this very, very small channel. I can't even get it easily without the glare. Very, very small channel here. This is called the feed channel or the ink channel. And this comes all the way down. So this connects back from where your ink reservoir is drawing the ink down, and then it comes up to the top here, and that's where it mates up to the nib. And then your ink is then transferred to the nib and comes down the slit to the tip of the nib. So one way that you can increase flow is you can actually take an X-Acto knife and you can drag it down the middle of that channel. And basically you can either deepen that channel or you can kind of cut into it and try to widen it. Now, that said, this is where it's really easy to screw it up, and you cannot undo it if you do it wrong, especially on these plastic feeds. Ebonite feeds, you have a little more room to work with, but these plastic feeds, you know, you basically just have to go really slow and really carefully and then keep, you know, putting the nib back on and trying it and seeing if that helps. If you do it too much, you really can't undo it, so then you'll end up with just a crazy wet pen or a pen that's so wet that it blobs and stuff like that. You don't want to do that. So you want to be very careful and just drag it down very intentionally and do that. That's the one way you can do it, is with the feed. There's a couple of different things you can do with the nib itself, which if you have it installed on the pen, so you can, again, use an X-Acto knife. You know, it probably would have been helpful if I had one on me to show you what the heck is even going on. I don't even know that I have one in my office here to show you right now. So, sorry about that. We'll have to talk conceptually. So you can take an X-Acto knife and you can actually put it in between the tines here. And you can use it to take the knife and you just bend it a little bit side to side, and you're actually taking those tines and you're forcing them to spread apart a little bit. Now if you do that enough, you're actually going to widen the tip, widen the two tines from each other, and it is going to increase the line width because you're moving it that much. If you do it just a hair, it's not going to change the tip size drastically, but it will increase that flow quite a bit. Typically you're only doing that when it's a problem, when you're having flow issues and it's writing too dry, like it's skipping and stuff like that. Then you know, I've seen nibmeisters use that trick to open up the tines a little bit and get it to flow just like it should, not necessarily to just make it flow wetter, but that is definitely one technique to do. The other technique, which doesn't require a knife, is if you are using the nib and you just want to widen the flow a little bit, you can actually just take and you can press it down and kind of force it. Force the nib, like flex it a little bit and spread those tines, which with a steel nib is kind of difficult to do. But you can do that. That will also open up the tines a little bit. The risk with that is that if you flex it too much, you can actually take the nib and you can end up bending it up like that, and it comes up and away from the feed, and that is not so ideal because that'll break the flow and it'll cause more problems than it will help. But that's a similar kind of concept to what you're doing with the knife, except you don't have to use a knife. So those are 3 different techniques you can do. Again, this is purely at your own risk, and I would only recommend that you try it if you are prepared emotionally to scrap whatever pen you're working on if you're experimenting with it. So don't try it on any precious pens that you have or anything that is particularly meaningful to you. I would just be cautious about doing those techniques, but that's the basic concept of how it's done. Again, I don't do any of this stuff commercially, so to speak. I mean, this is like nib tuning territory here, and I understand conceptually how to get it done. I've had it explained to me from some folks, but I do not do it on a regular basis. So please don't go doing this with some really expensive rare pen and then come back and say, Brian, you ruined my pen. Just use caution, but that's the basic concept. And then, of course, to kind of wrap up that conversation, you know, if you're to the point where you're like, I don't really want to modify my nib, I kind of have what I have, then you can use some ink and paper to kind of control it as well. You know, you talk about having good paper. If you love sheen, Tomoe River is pretty much the best paper to use for that I've experienced. That will actually draw sheen out of inks where you would think that they shouldn't even come from. So just switching to the paper could draw that sheen out a lot more. Granted, it's not in a lot of different notebook formats and stuff, but it can definitely look to do that. And then you know, you can look to switch to different inks, higher sheening inks as well. You know, Shimmertastic inks and the Jer Bond 1670 series and things like that, where you can definitely draw some more of that kind of sparkliness out of it, even in some of the finer nibs. So those are my recommendations. Hopefully that helps you out. All right, this is from lhlvierra on Instagram. I can't tell if those are capital I's or L's. Don't you hate when you do that? Anyway, so your question is, so what's the deal with green pens anyhow? Have you had no luck with them, or does it seem no one has much luck moving them anywhere? Are there any other things that oddly seem unwanted, like an ink color that just never finds any love? Trying to remember, but I think I have only one green fountain pen, a Schaefer school pen in the 1970s. Well, I thought this was a very fitting question since it's St. Patrick's Day and can talk about some green pens. And honestly, in conversation, as we're talking about, we have new product meetings a couple times a week, and we're talking about new products all the time here at Goulet, and what's new stuff we can carry, what should we consider dropping, that kind of stuff. Green pens, whenever they come up, it's kind of like, oh man, green pens. It's kind of notorious that green pens are just hit or miss, and so you never really know. So I went ahead and grabbed some green pens that I have, and I can kind of talk through which kind of do better, which kind of do worse, and which kind of I just think are better green pens. It's not always necessarily what's reflected in the sales, so to speak, but definitely when it comes to green pens, it's not often that in a range of color offerings that a single pen may have, that the greens are towards the top. Often they end up being kind of towards the bottom. It doesn't always, it doesn't always mean that that's bad. It just means that they're not usually as popular as a lot of other colors. That said, blacks and blues and things that are slightly more conservative tend to generally be a little more popular, and that's fine. And then depending on the brand and stuff, like purples may be a little more popular, and you may have some other things that are in there. But anyway, so some of the ones that have been pretty good, are usually in the kind of forest green or, slightly darker kind of green colors, a little more conservative greens, often with some black mixed in there. That's what usually tends to be a little more popular in terms of a green. Edison Nouveau Majestic Pine. This was our seasonal edition from 2015, the winter. So there's that one. The Aurora Optima. This green I really like because it's got a green, it's kind of a green and black fleck with a little bit of blue in it, like a little bit of blue-green. So really nice one. I like this green a lot. And then the Aurora Ypsilon as well, kind of a nice hunter green, really kind of a solid green that tends to do pretty well. The Lamy Blue Green actually did pretty okay. It's really, it's a different green than most of the other ones that I have here, but that one really was a nice color and did pretty well when it was out. The Lamy Apple Safari, not a huge seller, but definitely is still doing pretty well. Again, this kind of fits into that one where of the color range, the green will kind of, be a little bit towards the bottom, but honestly, this, as far as safaris go, this one's even above the blue, surprisingly. So this one kind of stands out a little bit, and this one's kind of interesting because it's a little more towards the lime color, which usually is where it doesn't do quite as well. But I think because the Lamy Safari is known for having a little bit brighter, poppier colors, it does better in this pen. But I think if you had a color like this in, say, an Aurora, Visconti, Edison, something like that, it would not do nearly as well. The Visconti Rembrandt Special Ops darker green with black components does pretty well. It's the most popular Rembrandt color that we've had. This is the Visconti Wall Street material. It's a celluloid material. This was in our Manhattan pen, but they've done it in a number of different pens prior, and they have it right now in the Divina Wall Street. So that is a pretty popular green as well. This one kind of trips me up a little bit. This is the Pilot Metropolitan green, which again is a little more of a lime color. Definitely on the lower popularity range of all of the Metropolitans, but still, it's not like it's a total flop. It still does okay. And then there's a number of Noodler's Ebonite greens, which are again kind of that darker green with black. This is Neponset Jade, and this one is really nice looking. Whenever Noodler's has done a dark green Ebonite, they've always done pretty respectably. Then I have the Visconti Van Gogh Irises, which is cool because it's not just a green, it's a whole assortment of greens. And again, kind of leans a little more to that lime color, but also does pretty well. I think part of that's because of, you know, the pen, you know, the painting that it's modeled after. Ones that haven't done maybe quite as well is the, probably not surprisingly, a gigantic lime green pen. The Jinhao 159 in this green, not a huge mover, but you know, it's okay, we tried it. The Nemesine green, kind of just a plain flat green. These tend to not do as well in general. This like kind of just flat green color. But it's interesting, it's not actually that different than the Apple Green Safari, but you know, this one we're probably gonna be cutting soon because it's not really swinging it. The TWSBI Eco in the lime green actually hasn't done too bad, but it's definitely not anywhere near the other colors. So we'll see how this one does. This is a newer release, so it's always hard to see how it's going to do because sometimes things do better because they're new and all that, but you know, it's definitely kind of polarizing for some folks. The Lamy Charged green, green with kind of a yellowish tinge to it. Lamy really is kind of, this was the last, I hope, of some of their, you know, like, let's go with everything like neon greens and yellows. They did that and really went wild with that for a couple of years. So that one, you know, it's not a bad color, but it definitely, if you look, you know, we've got a nice history with Lamy now. If we look over the history of all the different colors they've released since we've been around, not a stronger seller for us. And we kind of knew that coming out the gate. We knew it would be kind of a niche color. And then kind of in the same vein, the Faber-Castell Lume Piano in lime as well. So you see there's a little bit of a trend here. The limey greens tend to maybe not do quite as well, but again, it depends. It depends on if the brand is known for being a little bit in your face. That's fine. It definitely gets a reaction. Often not a good reaction with those limes, but it's really depends. And then when you get a nice dark kind of hunter with a bit of black mixed in, I think that tends to be a little bit better received. But yeah, that's kind of my take on green pens. But I'm curious to know which ones you guys think are good too, so feel free to comment on those as well. All right, this next question is a personal question from Benny L on Facebook. How do you decide on a suit pen? Basically a pen and ink to accompany an outfit, whether it is for formal setting or a dinner function. Most likely it would be used for short bouts of writing or signing autographs for the famous. To make it more interesting, permanent ink, since signing can be on contracts. Some recommendations would be good. Okay, so this is an interesting question for me. I thought this was nice to take, and I know from personal experience, when I have worn a suit, I'm always very intentional about the pen that I want to wear in the suit, partly because then it really becomes like an accessory, that you're like a fashion accessory. At pretty much no other time in my life do I think about fashion accessories, except maybe my watch. I have a couple different watches which I give maybe 2 seconds worth of thought to in the morning as to which one I'm going to grab. Sometimes I just don't even care and I just put on whatever one I wore yesterday. But anyway, so I'm not a big accessorizer personally. It takes everything for me to like pick an undershirt that somewhat matches my fleece or whatever. And you see I went with gray. I don't even know if this matches. Dark gray and light gray. Is that a faux pas? I don't really know. I'm not a fashion guy. Anyway, whatever that is. So I am pretty intentional when I wear my suits. I have one suit right now. The only suit that I have is, it's kind of like a gray suit, kind of like this color, gray, like a gunmetal-y kind of gray. So that, you know, kind of really anything can go with. So what I usually do is try and go with something fairly neutral, maybe something a little understated if that's what I'm going for. Or if I want to have like a pop of color, like on my tie or my shirt or something like that, I may pick a pen that matches the color to that, because then I don't know, I just think that's kind of cool. Half the time when I'm wearing a suit, it's for a function that I'm not really going to be writing anything, like, you know, a family wedding or something like that. And, you know, at that point, I got nothing to prove to anybody. You know, it's funny when I'm around my family and stuff, they're always like, oh my gosh, your pen business and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, you know, whatever, I'm just a guy. You know, but they always want to hear about it. So I might grab a fancy pen just you know, to kind of show people what it is that I do. But other things like other random business functions, most of the time, it's funny because like most of the time even though I'm the pen guy, in most of my business circles that I am associated with, most of them don't really know anything about pens. So I can pull out a Metropolitan and they're like, whoa, that's such a crazy pen. And I'm like, yeah, you don't even know. You know, if I pull out something like a, you know, Visconti, you know, watermark or something like that, they don't even know what to think of it. Or they just like, oh yeah, that is a fancy pen. And they don't even know. But anyway, so one of the pens that's kind of a standby for me, especially on the understated side, is the Lamy 2000. It's a great writing pen, of course, quick on the draw, really kind of classy. It's understated because there's minimal logoing and stuff like that. No real branding on it. Stainless steel and black. Especially matches my gray suit really well, but it's not going to clash with anything. And especially when you have it in your pen, you know, it's just got this kind of nice clip here, very minimal logoing on the top. So it just kind of hangs out there, and it's not really in your face. Now, the one question I do have, to jump in the middle of my own question as I'm answering it here, when you're wearing a suit, okay, this is for all you suit-wearing folk, men or women, either way. Is it more acceptable to wear a pen inside your suit jacket or maybe in your shirt pocket or in the outside pocket? Now, I know not every suit has an outside pocket, but the one suit that I do have right now, it has an outside pocket. And of course, I'm thinking, I like pens. I want to wear my pen where people can see it. But apparently that's a faux pas with other people. And I guess maybe you can imagine if you were wearing a handkerchief or something like that, maybe that is different. But I wear it on the outside of my pocket. And my argument is the suit that I have, which is by no means a very fancy suit, but it gets the job done. It actually has a pocket on the outside, but it's sewn shut. So it's just really an aesthetic thing, except for maybe about 3/4 of an inch at the end, just enough room to slide a pen in there. So it's literally a fake pocket, except you can only fit a pen in there. So I'm like, somebody at least at Kenneth Cole, which is the one brand of suit that I have, because I'm a thrifty suit shopper, because I never wear them, my Kenneth Cole suit, it has literally just a pen pocket on the outside. And I'm like, why would they put a pen pocket on the outside if you weren't supposed to put a pen in it? That's my logic. So anyway, it's like a cake versus pie kind of thing in my mind of like, you know, one or the other. So it's like a pen in the pocket on the outside or on the inside. So again, banter in the comments. I would love to know. What is more acceptable? Is Brian committing a fashion faux pas? I don't know. Please tell me, because I'm really oblivious to this kind of stuff. But anywho, Lamy 2000, really solid pen. I like that. Some other pens that I have that I think are very distinctive on the clip. None of these are cheap pens, so just brace yourself. I think the pens that get more into the costlier range are the brands that tend to drive a little bit more towards status, which again, I think when you're wearing a suit and you're intentionally picking a fancier looking pen to be interpreted by others as you're presenting yourself to the world, that would be a status-related purpose for the pen. And I think most of these status-related, status-oriented brands think a little bit more about this kind of stuff. So they design specifically their finials and then the clip intentionally to be worn and displayed as a part of your ensemble. I think that's the case with some of the brands that I'm going to talk about. I think, even though I don't sell this brand, I think they have done the best job in the world of display, visual display and recognition of branding. And of course, I'm going to say it's Montblanc. Whether it's the clip, which is sometimes distinctive, not particularly on this Leo Tolstoy, but they have the white star on top. And that is very distinctive. If you have a white star in your pen, a lot of other people, not everybody, but a lot of other people, it's probably the most recognizable pen, branding around today. Wasn't always the case. Sometimes back in the day, it was Schaefer with the white dot, or it was Parker with the arrow. There's a lot of the classic things which, maybe some of you vintage pen folk would recognize more, but the general population, the white star, I would argue, probably is the most recognizable branding today. Here's a 1912 that's got the big old logo on the top. I've got a Montblanc Strauss pen, which has a bow. Violin bow on the clip. So when you're wearing that, it's got the star and it's got the bow, which is kind of cool. And I have a classic 149 as well, which has the white star on the top. So very distinctive. Another brand that, also has a status element to it is Visconti. They have the logo in the top. They have the My Pen system where you can actually change out their logo with a jewel in the top. And you want to talk about getting some attention, throw a big jewel on top and that'll get it. And then they've got their bridge clip as well, which has the logo on the side. So that's kind of interesting. They go less with the logo, the recognition of the clip on the front, but a little more on the side. And so there's that. That's a Rembrandt, but a lot of their pens have that going on, the Homo sapiens, the Van Gogh. And then Pelikan as well. They've got their logo in the top here, and you can tell, especially with Pelikan, that their logo is meant for display, is because if you have it in your pocket, the Pelikan bird is actually facing, so that if you're looking at it, it's not me looking at it, the bird looks upside down, but other people looking at it, they see the bird. So good job, Pelikan, you know what you're doing. And then, of course, their clips on their Souverain series anyway, not necessarily on everything, like their lower-end stuff, but on the Souverain series, it actually is a Pelikan bill. So you can see here, like the eyes are at the top and the whole thing is a bill. So kind of recognizable there. When you have it sitting in your pocket, you get the bird on top and then you get the bill on the clip. So very intentional, nice, clever design, and I appreciate the intentionality there. That's why they do those. So I think when you get into pens kind of in this league, that's part of what you're getting, is that recognition, the branding. You get more creative stuff going on with the finials, and you get more logoing that tends to happen on those two places, because that's what you can see of the pen when it's in your pocket. And then another thing that's in general too is you'll tend to see a little bit more of the pens that have, whether it's wheel clips or spring clip or something like that, where it's made to fit over fatter material. I think, again, it's to be worn in a suit, not necessarily a thin like dress shirt material, but a suit jacket pocket. Whether inside or outside, it's going to be a little bit thicker than just maybe a regular shirt material. So that's why some of these brands, they end up being able to accommodate a little more, material on the shirt than some of your other pens would. And then the other thing you asked about was ink. So as far as ink goes, I really don't know about signing autographs for the famous. The one time a year where I get to be famous is when I go to the DC Pen Show. And I've signed a couple of autographs, nothing crazy. Usually I'll just have kind of whatever ink is in the pen that I have, but I don't know that you need to overthink it too much. I think a good all-around ink to use would be platinum carbon black. It's a pigmented ink, but it tends to sit well on coated papers and is also pretty ink resistant, dries fairly quick too. Sorry, ink resistant. It's pretty resistant to bleeding, is what I meant to say. An ink that's ink resistant. It's like a self-conflicted ink, isn't it? Anyway, so I think that's a pretty good all-around ink. It's permanent too, so it would work well for contracts, like you said would be good. A Noodler's Black too is kind of like my go-to all-around black whenever I'm signing documents and stuff like that. I might use something fun every now and then, like a Liberty's Elysium or something like that. But if I know specifically, if it's like a government document, I know they want black ink, whatever it is, I will go to Noodler's Black pretty often. And then I don't know, I just don't overthink ink too much when I'm wearing a suit. I don't know that really has anything to do with it. I think you can use pretty much whatever ink you want. It's not often situation, I guess use it whatever you think warrants the situation. Go with blues or blacks, tend to be more conservative, unless you want to go wild, in which case you can use whatever darn ink you feel like. And that's what I have to say about that. All right, I'm gonna take a sip of water before I go to the next question. Whew. How are we doing on time? Man! All right, I'm like 40 minutes in here. I really can't talk, can't I? All right, 2 more questions. This is from YC2017 on Instagram. I have a question about the Q&A itself. Among all these questions, how do you pick which one to be answered in the video? Do you read all the questions or do your colleagues pick for you? So it's been an evolution over the years. As you can imagine, doing Q&A for 160 episodes now. We're coming on it's about 2.5 years now, maybe a little bit more actually. Closer to 3 years. So it's been an evolutionary process. It used to be I would do everything. I would ask the questions on the platforms, collect all the questions, sort through them all, choose the questions, answer them, shoot the video. Never edit the video. I did have a video editor at the time I started Q&A, so I never had to edit it, but I did definitely have to do everything myself. That is not the case anymore, thank goodness. I have a team that helps me out. So now I have a media team, and we have 3 community coordinators who are on our different platforms, Colin, Madigan, and Lydia. They do a great job, so shout out to them. Good job, guys and gals. Anyway, so they are actually asking the questions on like a Friday afternoon. That way you get good engagement on Fridays, and usually, gives everybody over the weekend to ask their questions. So that's kind of nice, gives plenty of time, saturates it well. And then they come in on Monday and kind of gather the questions back up. So, we post the questions on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, and then we'll gather them back up. And then, of course, the blog is always open, and then the YouTube video, we're asking for that kind of, just as part of regular publishing. But we'll collect all that stuff back up and put it into a document. We have a shared, Google Sheet that we use. And then everybody kind of dumps all the questions in there. And until recently, that was kind of the end of their step of the process. And then I would have, anywhere between 30 and 65 questions a week. That tends to be kind of the range. And I would go through all of them and read all of them. And then, some of them were, questions I've answered, a bunch of times before, and so I kind of put them off. Some of them were like, I just don't really know, I don't feel confident I could answer this well, and I kind of put those off. And I'd kind of narrow it down myself to maybe, 15 questions or so. Like, yeah, I feel pretty good about these. And then I would like look at those questions and say, well, there's like 5 questions here about which color ink would match which color pen. I should probably just stick to maybe 1 or 2 of those and kind of narrow it down and get a good selection within the Q&A, within that specific one. Or I'd be like, yeah, you know what, I just answered something really similar last week. It's not the same question, but maybe I'll save this for a couple of weeks from now. So I'd kind of pick through like that. And then I'd narrow down my final selection, lock it in, arrange them the way that I want, and then, bullet out the answers, shoot it, and so on. So that was the process up until about a month ago. Maybe a little bit more than a month ago. Colin now he manages a lot of our YouTube comments, and he's helping me out with Q&A a bit. So he, had the idea, why don't we, kind of curate those questions a little bit, because I'm kind of already reading through the questions. Colin's been, he's been here for a year now, and he's been looking at the questions, got a pretty good sense for what would be an engaging Q&A question. He also helps to go through and pick all the Q&A slices that we then put back out on YouTube. So any individual question that's really strong, we'll slice that out, make it its own video. That way it's easily referenceable for you all. Our customer care team often will reference those slices as well. We have them kind of built out into, we've got our own internal wiki that we're building for customer care support, and, just make for good, quick answering of kind of offbeat questions. They can use as reference. So we'll actually slice up these Q&As quite a bit. So Colin has a good sense for what those are. So we're actually kind of curating based on what are more sliceable questions too. So that's kind of, really helpful. So he will kind of go through and do that. And then we thought also it'd be good to get our customer care team's perspective, because even though they're not on the media team doing like, publishing, content and things like that, they still are engaging with you all, the customers, a lot, like all the time. So it would be really good for them to get a sense of what is it that people are asking, what would be engaging content. So we have Katie from our customer care team. She is going through on a weekly basis with Colin and kind of looking through and saying, okay, I think from a customer care perspective, this would be really cool to answer, based on the questions they're getting. So they're both kind of going in and curating and saying, okay, Brian, here's a selection of maybe 10 to 15 questions we think would be pretty strong, knowing I'm going to go between maybe 6 and 10 questions, depending on how I'm feeling that week. So they'll kind of pre-select those, and then I will go through and still do the final selection. And I'll still look through all the rest of the questions, unless I just like really feel 100% confident that the questions they've chosen are great, which a lot of times the ones they choose are really good. But I'll kind of glance through and look and be like, is there anything that I'm kind of missing? And I'll look at the rest of the questions you all are asking. And then I'll kind of read through some, and every now and then I'll pick some. Like there were a couple that I answered this week. I think one of them might even been this question that they didn't make on the initial pass, but I was like, let me go ahead and pull that one in. I think I'd like to answer that one. Because sometimes it's like, it would be a really great question. I just don't have an answer, or it's a really great question, but it's about a pen that I know we're going to be releasing in 2 weeks. And I feel like it would be better to talk about that in 2 weeks. So sometimes I'll throw that out there and they just don't have that perspective necessarily. So, I'll kind of like, I always make the decision on like, what are the final questions that are going to be answered. In the future, who knows? The process could be different. I could go a little more impromptu style and just have, like when we had the Q&A live, just like throw me questions. I may end up going that route. I don't know. But this is the groove that we've kind of been in, and it's kind of continuing to work it like that. So, Colin and Katie will usually have those picked out for me by noon on Wednesday. Excuse me, noon on Tuesday. Then I have the rest of Tuesday afternoon. It's usually Tuesday evening that I end up going through and selecting my questions, and then actually bulleting out all the answers. And then I shoot it on Wednesday, usually in the afternoon, like I am right now. It's 4 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. I'm shooting this, and then Jenny has time to edit it all day on Thursday, and then we publish it on Friday. And that's the Q&A magic, at least the current process. So I know I've answered stuff before about how we do Q&A, but because we've recently changed it a little bit, I thought it'd be kind of pertinent to talk about it again, and then shout out the team. So you see, it is a very concerted team effort, and it's a lot of time that we spend on Q&A every week, like kind of a lot of time, but it's really good. It's really engaging. I love doing this for you guys, and the fact that you keep asking questions means I'm going to keep answering them. So I'm honored by the fact that you keep asking them. So I will keep on doing it as long as you let me. And the last question for this week is from Adam Elbahuti on Instagram. What were some hardships that came or come with creating a business, especially one with a relatively small market? And what is your philosophy for overcoming them? Well, Adam, this is a super general question. What are the hardships in starting a business? Everything, I think, would be the short answer. But I almost didn't take this question because I thought it was so broad. It's like, how am I even going to answer this? And I made some notes, and we're going to see how much I stick to those because I tend to get on a roll when I'm talking about this stuff. And in fact, I literally just had lunch today with a younger guy that I know who is a pen turner, who is he's quit his job and he's going full time and is looking for some advice. And I'm like, have I got some advice for you, buddy? I'm gonna help you out. So just literally before I shot this Q&A, I had lunch with a guy who was asking me a lot of the same kind of stuff. So I could sit here and talk for days about the hardships that could happen. But I think the hardest thing for me initially was just finding the right niche in the first place. Specifically if you're looking to be, hey, I want to sell, I don't know, I want to sell groceries on the internet. Okay. Everybody needs food. Everybody's buying food, so maybe not everybody. Some people are farming themselves, but everybody's buying food, and that's a pretty broad market. So yes, if you're looking to go with something a little more niche than that, you got to find the niche. And then usually the challenge when finding a niche is finding a niche that's not already saturated. For example, fountain pens now is a more saturated market in terms of retailers than there was in 2009 before I came about. That's part of the reason I got into it in the first place, is because I thought there was more opportunity, and I thought the community was kind of underserved in the way of retailing. So that's where I saw the opportunity, and I jumped in there, blindfolded, dove in head first. And here I am. So I tried a lot of different stuff. I tried pen making. I tried getting into making, wax seal handles. I tried a lot of different aspects of making things, wine bottle stoppers. I tried doing Virginia Tech licensed products. I actually went through and made wooden pens and bottle stoppers and stuff that were licensed with the Virginia Tech logo. Did not sell well. I tried doing craft shows and craft fairs. I tried doing custom work. I tried doing corporate orders. I tried, what else did I try? Just a bunch of different things like that. Not stuff that was completely all over the map. It was still kind of related to what I was manufacturing, but it was a little bit all over the place for a while there. I tried advertising and the celebrity gift bags at the Emmys. I tried, just all over. I was all over the map. I tried doing, custom stuff and just all kinds of weird things. I write antique writing boxes. I thought I was going to make those for a while, and just all kinds of things. You just don't know. You don't know what's going to take off. And so I thought I might start a woodworking blog and get into, being like an influencer in the woodworking tool community. You know what I mean? Like just, crazy stuff. So you just don't know what's going to work at first, which I think is one of the biggest hardships, is just having a viable business idea in the first place. That's a huge challenge. So that was probably the hardest thing. And then, matching up your talent with kind of what the needs are within that community is also difficult. And then that's kind of the magic of like having a viable business model. And then so if you can get through all that stuff and you have, something that's going to work and there's demand for it, you have to have the ability to supply, and then there has to be a demand for it. Not real challenging economics here. The first 3 or 4 years was really kind of just discovering that, like, what is this thing? I thought I was going to be an electrician. I was doing the woodworking thing. I just didn't know. I was all over the place. And then after that, things got a lot easier. I had clarity of vision and direction. So once I knew, like, fountain pens, retailing, blogging, doing videos, this kind of stuff, this is my jam. And I was like, this is it. I'm going to go all in. Rachel was helping do the website and the accounting and the HR and customer service and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of logistics. And I was doing the marketing and the product knowledge and that kind of stuff. So together we worked on that, and we kind of rounded out our skill sets in the early days of the business, and we were going nuts on that. After that, logistics started to become the bottleneck. So we knew what we were doing, but then we had to set up, accounting software, and we had to do shipping logistics, and we had to do warehousing and inventory, and we had to have a process for receiving products and then checking them off and coordinating with vendors, and when they shipped us the wrong stuff or when stuff broke in transit, which happens all the time. So just figuring all that stuff out, and we're shipping stuff and finding the right type of bubble wrap, and do we even use bubble wrap? Maybe we should use packing peanuts. Maybe we should use newsprint crumpled up in the box. You don't know. No one tells you any of that stuff. You have to figure it all out for yourself. And especially as young as we started this business, we didn't have a lot of worldly experience to pull into this. So we were having to figure everything out from the very beginning. So which computer system do you use? How do you do your computer backups, especially when you get into doing video and all this kind of stuff? What about the camera? Do I pick a camera with an SD card or a CF? It's like you have to answer all these types of questions. So the logistics of just how are you going to do all this stuff really starts to bog it down. And the systems. You put systems in place for managing all of these things, because that's what you need, because your labor then becomes a bottleneck. You don't have enough time to do everything, so you have to systematize things. Gaining product knowledge, it took a while, it took a lot of time, but it was enjoyable. It wasn't really that hard, so that really wasn't the hang up for me. After figuring out the logistics, then we had a well-oiled machine. We were managing it well, but we were working like 16, 18 hours a day. So then it became hiring people. And as soon as you start dealing with people, people are not systems. If you have a computer, if you have shipping software and it's doing something kooky, there's a very logical reason why it's happening. When you start hiring people and managing people, the dynamics get so complex because people are not machines. We're complex individuals. We have personalities. We have goals and dreams and desires, which are shifting and changing on a minute-by-minute basis. So then when we get into management, it's a whole other ball of wax. That's probably the biggest, aside from the initial discovering what is even a viable business model in the first place. Once you kind of figure all that out, then when you go from working for yourself to having, team members, having employees, that's when it becomes really a whole other ball of wax. And then you have to become a leader. You have to have a vision. You have to have clarity about your vision and where you're trying to go with it. You don't really need as much clarity when it's just you, because you inherently kind of know what it is you're trying to do, or at least you should. Some people don't really know, and that's when they end up floundering. But if you know, like, yeah, this is what I want to do, you have to say it and 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 say it for other people to see that same vision, because they're not you and they don't know exactly what's going on, and as you get bigger, that gets even more difficult. In the first few days, you're like rubbing elbows with people and they're living it and they're with you in that vision, those first few 5 or 10 people you hire. When you get beyond 10 or 12, it starts to get more difficult because you get spread out geographically a little bit more and you're not really in shouting distance to each other anymore. So you have to start having meetings together, and then you have to structure those meetings in such a way, and you have to think about the communication flow across teams, and it gets to be really fun and really interesting. And that's more of the dynamic of kind of where I'm at now. It's like, okay, it's not just, I want to learn about this pen and then I'll tell you about this pen. That's great, very efficient, but I have to talk to my whole team. So if we want to carry a new product, we have to have a whole team's input into it, make a decision. I believe that you should still have single decision makers a lot of time, but you still want to get input from all areas of the company, and then you have to communicate that back out to everybody. And then different people may have different reactions and different understandings. So you have to worry about how are the teams all connected to each other, and are we all unified and feeling pulled in the same direction? Do we all understand the vision that we're trying to do? It gets to be pretty interesting and pretty fun. And when it happens, we've grown so fast as we have here. We've gone from, well, our oldest team member, not oldest, most tenured team member that we have here is going to be hitting 6 years in May. Well, in less than 6 years' time, we've gone from just Rachel and I to 40 people. That is a pretty rapid growth, not as rapid as some of the unicorn, startups you hear about in Silicon Valley type of thing, but it's pretty darn good for Richmond, Virginia, I can tell you that much. So it gets to be that much more important to kind of preach that out. Just so to kind of summarize everything here, I think what has saved me and our business through all this change has been kind of our number one core value that we have in our company, which is work hard, be honest, be flexible. That was a mantra that my parents raised me with, having started a couple of companies that my parents did. They kind of always preach work hard, be honest, be flexible. And work hard, I think is a given. I think that no matter what it is you're trying to do, if you're trying to work for yourself, you have to work hard. You're not going to be able to get around that. Be honest. I think if you are just true to yourself and you're true to whoever it is you're serving and always upfront and you're genuine and authentic and you have the long-term picture in mind. If you try to pull a fast one over on people, man, they pick up on it so quick, especially nowadays, especially with social media, as fast as information moves. I believe today people are more savvy than ever before. So you got to have transparency and authenticity is super key. And then be flexible. There's just going to be so many things that come your way. You're going to have shifts in your business that are going to happen. Some of them you'll see and some of them you won't. You'll get blindsided. You just have to, be very agile. I actually kind of like the word agility a little bit more than flexibility, but I kept to be flexible just because it was what my parents, told me, and it really kind of meant a lot at the time we were defining our company values. The work hard, be honest, be flexible, that trio really meant something. So I didn't want to break that up. But the word agility is more of like a proactive form, at least in my mind. It's more of a proactive form of flexibility. Flexibility, you think of like, this is happening to me and I have to be flexible, whereas agility is, hey, it looks like this is coming, let's move this way, that way we can dart around it. That's kind of how I view agility. So we've tried to be very agile around here in this company as we've grown. And then, passion is really helpful, and then caring. I think if you do nothing else, if you care deeply about your team, about your customers, about your product, about the service that you're providing, I think without that, you're in big trouble. So there's certain key components like that have to be in place. And then you have to figure out all the logistics and everything else, and you have to do it all really well. So it's kind of tough, isn't it? Running a business is kind of tough. But if you're wired for it, it's really great, and it pumps you up like nothing else. And it gets me going, I can tell you that much. I really do enjoy it, and I literally just talked about this for like an hour and a half right before I did this Q&A. With this guy, and now I'm talking about it with you here again. So with that said, I want to go ahead and cut myself off because I could go on about it all day. I got a question of the week for this week. I'm just going to go completely off topic of this Q&A with the question of the week. What is the most meaningful thing that you have ever written with a fountain pen? Whether it's a signed contract or a poem to your significant other, whether serving overseas or whatever it is, what's the most meaningful thing that you personally have ever written with a fountain pen? I would love to know what that is. Me personally, I should have, I thought ahead of time, I was like, I should really think about this question. I think for me, I think the deed to our house that we live in now, I signed that with Liberty's Elysium. At the time we got married, I wasn't into fountain pens, so I didn't sign our marriage license with a fountain pen, but we did sign our deed to our house with it. That was pretty cool. But one of the, just to crack open the personal Goulet life a little bit here. For this past Valentine's Day, I heard on the radio that, you know, it's a cool idea as a Valentine's Day gift would be to write a letter to your significant other about all the things that you love about them. And I really took to that. I thought that would be a really cool thing to do for Rachel this year. So I just wrote an exhaustive list of everything I could think of reasons why I love her. And that was really cool. You know, Rachel and I have been married for over 10 years now. We've been together for 15 years. You know, and when you've been together that long, it's easy to kind of just, you know, go about your business, and, you know, you want to try to keep the spark alive, and that's a really cool thing to do. So I'd recommend that for any of you that have kind of been in a relationship for a while. Just writing like a highly personalized, laced with inside jokes that no one else would really understand, you know, reasons that you love the other person. It's kind of cool. Like I enjoyed doing it probably even more than she enjoys reading it. So it's kind of cool. Like she'll look at it when she's having a tough day or something like that. She'll read it and just kind of fills her up a little bit. And, you know, it's kind of cool. I'm like getting whatever as I'm talking about it. So anyway, kind of a cool thing. So sorry if that came across as kind of a humble brag, but no, that's personally the most meaningful thing, I think, and it's very recent too. I think it's the most meaningful thing I may have ever written with a fountain pen, to me personally and to Rachel. So anyway, yay for this week. That's it. I hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day. Have a wonderful weekend. You can check out a lot of these pens that I talked about on gouletpens.com. Be sure to subscribe to YouTube, the blog, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, why not? All these wonderful places that you can find Goulet pens. And, you know, I just really am honored that you continue to watch me. Thanks so much, and right on.